Good afternoon. We're just going to wait for some folks to come in out of the waiting room, and then we'll go ahead and get started here. So, Chris, we need to get some intro music or something like for, when we're sitting here at this awkward silence waiting for people to come in out of the waiting room. Yeah.
I could sing, but that might run them back off. Uh, all right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started here. I know we have some other folks that will be joining us as we go along, but these hours, 1 hour sessions move along here pretty quick, so we'll not waste any time. I'm Dave Carter, Regional Director with Flowery Hill Institute, along with Chris Roper, fellow Regional Director. We're both on the road, so I'm in a hotel room and Chris is in his vehicle this afternoon. I'm really pleased to have you with us this afternoon to talk about the topic of why a co-op. Uh, why should you look at organizing a co-op for a meat or poultry processing enterprise? And we're really pleased we have some great folks with us today that are going to share some information. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, this is being recorded, so folks that can't be with us this afternoon, um, it'll be on our website and they can download it. We will probably also be putting together an FAQ document to go along with this afterwards, because I think there's some topics here that would lend themselves for an FAQ document. Um, as we go along, is you have questions, be sure and put them into the Q&A box. Chris and I'll watch for those coming in, and we will pivot and begin passing those along to our guests. Also, you'll be getting a 2-question survey after the roundtable. It's very simple. First of all, what did you think of this session? And number two, what are some thoughts? What would you like to see us cover in the future? Chris and I've been doing about 1 or 2 of these a month, and so we're always looking for what you want to hear about as we go forward. So, Chris, did we cover the housekeeping here? Yeah, did good on that. So I think we're good to go.
All right, good. So anyway, yeah, we're really pleased to have 3 folks that are with us here. Mark Siderius with the Glacier Co-op, Processing Co-op in Montana, Kate Latour with CoBank, and Alex Stone with Cooperation Works. So first of all, I have you guys just do a brief introduction of yourselves. So kick it off, Mark.
So I'm Mark Siderius. I'm the chairperson for Glacier Processing Cooperative. We bought a very old meat processing facility a little over a year ago called Vanny Vanner Meats and Montana Jerky Company in Columbia Falls, Montana, up between Flathead Lake and Glacier National Park.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kate Latour. I am a senior manager for corporate social responsibility at CoBank, where I help to manage some of our partnerships with nonprofits, and I'll talk a little bit later about our Co-op Star program.
Great. And Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Stone, and I am the Executive Director of Cooperation Works. We're a national network of cooperative developers who do cross-sector co-op development work in all 50 states. And we have quite a few people working in rural food systems and even with meat processors. And we also provide education for new co-op developers. Thanks.
Great. Well, thanks, guys, and thanks for being with us. So, Mark, we're going to start off with you. You mentioned that you bought an old processing facility there and are making major changes on that. But tell us a little bit about the process. What motivated you and your fellow ranchers to take a look at putting together a co-op to do what you're trying to do?
So our journey, I guess, started in August of 2022, and I was walking into the county fair market livestock sale with the owner of the facility, Ron Vannyvanner. We'd processed there all my life, um, you know, so a long time, a long relationship, and a good friendship. And as we were walking in, he said, I just got to be done. I just got to retire. I need out of this. He had had numerous sale attempts that fell through, and his tone was just different at the time. I talked to my wife later, and it's an integral part of our business on the direct marketing side of things. And Heather was like, "You better figure something out, you know." And at the time, Montana Farmers Union had been working to create Montana Premium Processing Cooperative in Havre, and it was a ground up blue sky cooperative that they were doing. So I reached out to Montana Farmers Union, and that was the kickoff of that, I guess, you know. So from there, it led to an interest meeting, which about 5 phone calls had 30 people in a room for that. Following up with that, Montana Department of Ag got involved, Mission West Cooperative Development, Flower Hill. It just kind of steamrolled from there with resources coming to the surface trying to make this happen. So, and we were at a point that a co-op was the way to go. I mean, we have multiple other businesses as well as our farm and ranch operations, and I had no desire to cut meat. I had no desire because I knew, you can't be a sole owner of that business and not go in and work because people are calling in sick. And so really, truly, that co-op plan was the ticket to spread that workload and to spread those problems over many hands and have that buy-in. We were really fortunate in the fact all the pieces came together as we were riding the wave of COVID help out, I guess. We were 6 months later, I don't know that we'd have gotten this off the ground. We were also at an incredible advantage in the fact that, it was running it along at a time when the scheduling was 18 to 24 months out on the schedule. So we had a lot of producers who may not have business models or like ideas, but they were all pulling together for the same interest. So, it was kind of a perfect alignment of things to make this happen. So like I say, we started in August of 22, finally in April of 24, we made the purchase April 1. So that's kind of our story in a nutshell.
Great. Chris, you've been involved on the ground on that one too, working with Mark and his folks. So what do you need to fill in there? Yeah.
Cooperation, cooperation, cooperation. The ranchers there needed processing, and they were truly at risk of losing one of two plants in that region. And those ranchers really came together. Mark is a true leader, and I feel like has kept things together and kept things moving. But those ranchers have all came together there, and I've been fortunate to be at a lot of their public meetings. There was one of maybe the second public meeting they had, over 100 people showed up and were interested in participating in that co-op and saving that plant so that they didn't lose that valuable meat processing operation there in that community. So they knew it was important, and they knew they had to get along to make it happen. So I really give them all a lot of credit for that, and then they've done a wonderful job so far.
Great. And Alex, Mark mentioned Mission West Cooperative Development Center. And explain a little bit. Yeah, you can fill people in on Cooperation Works and what is the network of co-op development centers that are available to folks?
Yeah, so like I said, we have members working all over the US to provide business support, training, education, and other technical assistance to startup and growing cooperatives. So in Montana, we actually happen to have two members, Mission West, as you just mentioned, and also the Montana Cooperative Development Association. And so our members, they look a little different depending on where they are and where they're operating. Many of our members serve an entire state or region, and they do cross-sector work. So they would work with something like a meat processing co-op or other ag-centered co-ops. They might also work with worker co-ops or consumer co-ops to help get them started. And then we have a couple of members that have a much broader geographical geographic focus. They serve the entire U.S., but they focus on one specific sector. Like Food Co-op Initiative does just food co-ops, and Dowie does worker cooperatives. So yeah, Mission West is, like I said, one of our member centers, and they provide all sorts of support for co-ops getting started, like Mark's.
Great. Is it safe to say that no matter where you're at in the US, there's a co-op development center available to you?
Yeah, close. There are definitely a couple of places where there are gaps. There could be a stronger network there. Like I said, there are a couple national centers, so in that way, that is true. But if you're looking for that cross-sector development center that serves an entire state or region, there are definitely a couple gaps. But generally speaking, we could get you connected with someone. And if you want to help grow your co-op development ecosystem, I encourage you to check out Cooperation Works Training for New Co-op Developers, the Art and Science of Cooperative Development, which has actually, we have had numerous people, at least 4 that I can think of off the top of my head, who have come through our program and then started a co-op development center in an area that previously was not served by one.
Great. So it's a big tent. It's still open, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Great, great. So Kate, people know CoBank, I think, but do they really know CoBank? So yeah, can you kind of fill us in on CoBank and some of the resources that you're making available, particularly for meat and poultry processors right now? Yeah.
Yeah, I ask myself that every day, Dave. I'm like, I know CoBank, right? I do. So yes, so CoBank is part of the Farm Credit System. We are a cooperative bank. We are owned by our borrowers. We play a unique role in the system in that we are the wholesale lender for 16 farm credit associations across 23 states, and that region is really Kansas, Oklahoma, and the West, and then New Jersey and the Northeast. Just as the way co-ops have come together across 100 years of agriculture. In addition to that wholesale business, CoBank also provides financing directly to agriculture co-ops and ag businesses, as well as utility cooperatives. So water, electricity, generation and transmission, and broadband. And then we also do some export financing as well. So that's what I mean when I say I'm always learning about new aspects of our business. But on top of that, we do take very seriously our role as our incorporation as a cooperative and our role in the system. And so we do have about 1% of the bank's earnings each year is invested in charitable efforts. And so one of those programs that we've launched in response to what we hear from folks on the ground and our customers is called Co-op Start. And so as that program, we match member raised equity up to $50,000. And in addition to that grant that's provided to the co-op, we also provide a grant directly to the technical assistance providers who are supporting that work, because we do know that co-ops are a labor of love sometimes. And so the business development and the technical assistance really is necessary to make sure that the foundation of that co-op is strong, and that it can have a great long tenure. And so for Co-op Start, I know Dave has some information that, if it has not already been shared, will be shared. That program is open now, and application period closes on August 1st this year. But we have some great programs, co-ops that come out of that program. Including on this roundtable. So yeah, I think that probably, in addition to the grant component, I will mention we do offer loans as part of Co-op Start. Those are a little bit different than kind of the traditional loans within the bank, and have a little bit different underwriting requirements. And those are capped at $250,000, but maybe of interest to some folks on this call.
Well, to emphasize what Kate was saying, yeah, if people are interested in learning more about how to apply for the Co-op Start program, we've been working with Kate and can work with you on that information. So I'm going to stay with you, Kate, because when we were talking the other day, one of the things I threw out that Chris and I run into quite a bit when we're working with folks that are starting a meat processing or a poultry processing enterprise, and there is a group of producers involved, they're saying, so why should we look at a co-op? What's different about a co-op versus an LLC or a partnership? what, why should we consider a co-op? So,
Yeah, I can start there and then we'll definitely invite my colleagues here to join. But I really do think that the fundamental principles of cooperatives, the seven principles that each co-op, wherever they're located, is governed by, really sets them apart from other business models. I think one member, one vote for me is one of the kind of cornerstones of the business model. And so, you know, particularly when it's people who you might have long relationships with, or it's people who you might have just met, who have come into this co-op, and understanding that your vote and their vote have the same weight, really, I think puts things on equal footing and makes sure that that kind of democratic process, small d democratic process, can prevail. I think, you know, the economic benefits tend to come down the road, but again, setting that strong foundation of the co-op and its governing documents and its bylaws are, I think, what sets it apart from other business models. Alex, I know you have more to add there, so I'll turn it right to you.
Definitely, but I think that was a great start. Yeah, I mean, cooperatives give communities the opportunity to come together to meet their needs, particularly when the private market fails, right? So we're looking at the meat processing co-op. We know that across the country, there's actually been tons of closures, lots of consolidation, often months-long waiting lists. You might have specialty producers who can't get their meat processed at all because the type of facility near them just doesn't handle that, right? And yet we know there's this need. Mark referenced, I think, did you say 100 members already? Or 100 people came together at least? So we know that there is a need, but the seller of, or the former owner of that processing facility couldn't find a seller. So if the people in the community didn't come together, they would lose this resource. Where there clearly is a need, but it's not one that the private market recognizes. Just emphasizing what Kate said, it's a way to practice democracy daily, to really incorporate it into your life. It's a way to empower everyone in the community, everyone in the cooperative. It's a way to build businesses that actually stay and that really invest in the communities that they exist in. And you know that, you know, if opportunities come along, they're gonna consider the community and bring them along with that. I could probably go on for quite a bit longer, but I'll let Mark hop in here if he wants to.
I also just wanted to note too, one of the benefits, particularly in areas like meat processing, where it's a very capital intensive industry, it helps to have multiple people putting their dollars in the pot, right? Just like from a very fundamental perspective. One of the challenges that sellers tend to see is that there's no single individual who can afford taking that on themselves. And so the benefit of spreading that risk across multiple producers is also a huge benefit, just for the stability of the business, but also the ability to buy it.
Absolutely.
Mark, they're throwing that right into your lap. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, talk a little bit about how you structured it so that people, their investment and their commitment and the like.
So right now, I think we've got 41 members who have joined, and then some preferred stock investors as well. But you know, we made our membership fee a relative fee. I mean, it's a $7,000 buy-in for a producer. Our co-op will close at 300 producers. We don't currently have that capacity, but we're going to expand. But at any rate, so at the closure of that will be enough to pay for the initial investment of the plant and facilities and all that. So ours, we still have a lot of non-member producers processing there, but we're set up in a tiered structure that members process at a reduced rate, about a 20% reduced rate to non-members. We schedule twice a year now. We schedule in January for the July through December cycle and July for January through June. Members have the opportunity to schedule all their spaces that they would like, and then we open that up to non-members to fill the remainder of the schedule. That's worked really well. We have a waiting list typically running, and that waiting list members move to the front of the waiting list again too, to try to make this as fair and equitable as it can. The co-op was a great way for us to do it. As as Kate said, it's a high volume, low margin business like nearly every other agricultural, you know, production scenario. Everything is high volume, low margin. In this particular case, we're able to invest in our workers and invest in our facility, because our producer members, they're reaping their value out of their own processed animals. It will pay off in a dividend to them down the road, but for right now, they're making their money. So we're able to invest in those workers, we're able to invest in the facility. And the part that I would say with the co-op, one of the things, I never thought about it before, but our workers are really happy. Our workers are really happy. We're paying a good wage. If we were an LLC or if we were a sole proprietorship, I mean, if I went out and bought a new car, those workers would grumble and say, well, he's buying that new car off my back. It's because of me that he's doing that. I'm making him this excess money, and here I'm getting peanuts. And our workers don't have that, because they look at this and they see, well, they're investing this back in me. They're giving me the equipment and materials that I need to do my job better and faster and have an easier work day. So, meat processing and the co-op structure really, truly go hand in hand, in my opinion.
Alex, I see you nodding your head a lot when we're talking about workers involved in the co-op. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we just know that, as I was saying, there's often concern for community, and workers are part of the community. So, you might have a worker co-op where the workers themselves own it, and obviously that's going to lead to more dignified jobs, generally with higher wages and a little more flexibility. But I think we see even in cooperatives that are not necessarily worker owned, there is also more concern for the workers built in. I think, again, going back to the fact that this is really an asset for the community. And workers are part of that community. So it just sort of inherently recognizes that. And Kate, I saw you come off mute, so take it away.
I think just from the employer perspective too, like there's measurably lower turnover as well. And so just having to worry less about filling jobs and treating the workers you have well and with respect, I think is just one less thing to be having as a challenge to run any business. So I think there's a couple of resources that I'll share with Dave and Chris from my former employer, the National Cooperative Business Association. They have both the ABCs of cooperative impact, as well as they recently published a report at impact.coop that is in celebration of the International Year of the Cooperatives, which is this year. That just has some of those stories that really highlights the different aspects in which co-ops are better stewards in their community and better performers in the business world, and different ways that they excel.
And I'd love to just jump in and insert that one. Cooperation Works revised what used to be known as the Madison Principles over the last couple of years, and now they're the Cooperation Works Principles for Co-op Development. And one of those principles for cooperative developers to ethically practice co-op development is encourage workers' dignity. So we have explicitly built that in for how we operate with our co-op developers and what we encourage in our network. And then I would also just, Kate referenced sort of the longevity of workers in cooperatives and that they tend to stick around longer. I think that also is both enables and is reflective of not just better working conditions generally, but also more opportunity, right? If you think somebody is actually going to be around for half a decade longer, then you're also more willing to invest resources into getting them skilled up, having them able to access more opportunities in the co-op and perhaps beyond. So just putting that on the table too, is that there's really workforce development that's a little more built into the cooperative model when workers' concerns are, centered.
Great.
I had a quick question, Dave, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Mark and you all being in Montana, and Dave and I work with 3 successful meat processing cooperatives in Montana. Why do you think that Montana is seeing this model and invigorating this model? And why are you all so successful in Montana when we don't see it as much in other states? And besides giving Mission West a shout out here, they're amazing and great help to you all out there. But what do you see as a primary driver in Montana?
I think, Montana has a lot of opportunity in the fact that, we have a lot of extremely rural area, but then we have, the western part of the state with extreme growth. Um, and so there's market potentials there that people just need to figure out how to capitalize on. And I think, Montana, and I shouldn't say just Montana, but Montana, North Dakota, they're states with lots of co-ops. So co-ops aren't really a foreign thing to Montana. So I think a lot of producers are more willing to step into a co-op than they would be in other areas where you have to try to educate them first on what a co-op is, what it's going to do, because nearly every Montanan is part of a co-op, whether it be the electric co-op, a telephone co-op, whatever that is, so co-ops are not a scary thing here. And then I think just geographically, because all of these plants in Montana, it doesn't matter where you're at, your plant's a regional hub. I mean, there's no plant that you can say, oh, I'm just a local. It's a regional hub. We have stuff moving, I think most every plant has stuff moving, 150 plus miles, so Montana's a bit of an anomaly, I think, in with several things coming together to make it more co-op friendly, I guess.
And Mark, let me stay with you and let me remind folks that if you got any questions, put them into the Q&A there so we can pass them along. But we've been talking a lot about the benefits and those type of things, but it's not an easy path. So, what are some of the primary challenges that you faced in putting together glacier processing, Mark?
So I mean, a lot of things came a lot easier than we thought. Gathering people, casting that loop and pulling people in. That was a lot easier than we expected. Forming the co-op itself, crafting that. I mean, we started, I think, in January of 23 meeting as a steering committee, and we didn't really know what to expect as, our co-op person was like, so is Tuesday at 5:30? Does that work for everybody? And we were like, well, yeah. And, okay, well, we'll just block off Tuesday at 5:30 every week for the next year. And we met twice a month in person, twice a month via Zoom, and we met weekly for a year. After a year, we met twice a month instead of weekly. And so that part of it, the commitment part, was a lot. I didn't expect that. It's been very rewarding. I mean, if you like to learn and enjoy learning, it's a great thing, but you're going to spend some time. Our facility was a little different in the fact with the co-op side of things. We were operating full speed, same as they always had. So we didn't have an employee and still don't have excess employees to run around and do special projects and stuff. So that's been up to co-op members and board members in particular have filled those roles. I don't know how many hours I've spent up there, but a lot. And then our facility was split. The jerky company was federally inspected. The remainder was state inspected. We spent a year getting everything moved under federal inspection again. That was really probably the biggest challenge we had was, deferred maintenance, just bringing it up to the standards expected by USDA. Our plant, the oldest parts of our plant are 1945. So it took some work, and that's been nearly entirely board member, work in that, a lot of hours, a lot of commitment. And the rewards of it, Dave, I will interject that the rewards of it are, we're building a brand new co-op. our membership, they're able to craft this how they want it. I mean, it's the first time, you join CHS, you have no say in how things are running. This co-op, you're building it. And so it's been a bigger task than I ever would have imagined. I won't say that I wouldn't have done it had I known what it was going to take, but I'd have definitely thought a little more about it.
That's great. So before I get to Kim's question, you you know, Chris started off saying cooperation, 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 and he and I have always said the first step to organizing a co-op is getting people to cooperate. But Alex, you mentioned the other day, it's never going to be always kumbaya. That there's always going to be conflict involved in a cooperative, and yeah, speak to that a little bit in navigating through some conflict resolution.
Yeah, I think Mark sort of hit on it in a couple of ways already, or at least started to hit on it. I mean, at the very start of this, when he was talking about Glacier, he mentioned that all of the members like shared a vision and a mission, and they had the same goals, right? So I do think that members need to have strong alignment on those things. You need to be working toward the same thing, certainly. And I think ensuring that your basically values aligned with each other is important as well. But yeah, last week when you were talking, had a question about conflict, sort of implying that maybe it was a little less. And it's like conflict's definitely going to happen. You have a group of people, whether it's 10 people or 100 or 1,000, conflict's going to happen. So Mark also had mentioned, that year meeting every week, twice a month in person and twice online. And that is a key time to do that, forming, storming, norming, performing element, right? Figure out what are your shared values. Make sure that you are all working toward the same mission and vision. It's a great time to talk about how you're going to make decisions, right? Part of cooperatives are the democratic governance, but there's a lot of ways you can approach that. So making sure that folks are on the same page about how decisions will get made, who will make the decisions, figuring out, how board elections are going to work, and of course, just having policies about how to handle conflict if that comes up. That's a conversation, and that is going to look different in every cooperative because there are different people involved. I think probably most folks on this call have heard the saying, if you've seen one co-op, you've seen one co-op. And that absolutely applies also to how folks navigate this. And I think that's one of the really special and valuable things about cooperative is that there certainly are best practices. You can certainly model it on what's been done before, but you can also create processes that work for the people that are involved in that cooperative. But it's important just to know that conflict will arise, and it's better to understand how you plan to approach it before it happens rather than being surprised as it crops up, and having a commitment to, I think, working through it, right? Not being surprised that there will be conflict. Yeah, I'll leave it at that for right now. And Kate, I saw you
Did you
come
want
off.
to add anything? Yeah.
I think it just emphasizes the point I was trying to make earlier of it takes someone who is trained in co-ops, a technical assistance provider who is familiar with this organizing process to help you navigate that. And I think, every co-op is unique for sure. But there are through lines, there are trends, right? And so I think having the support, the business support from folks who are trained in co-op development is so valuable to help you navigate with people who you're hopefully going to be with for decades, right? Working alongside. And so I think it just emphasizes that point of that expertise.
Thanks, Kate, for
Well,
plugging this
yes.
network.
Yep. Kim has a question here that's near and dear to my heart, and it was examples of existing small meat processors working collaboratively using a co-op model. And I'll just throw it out, one of the things that we've been working a lot on with meat processors is byproduct utilization. What do you do with your byproducts? And individually, they may not have enough, the critical mass to get the interest of somebody with pet food manufacturing or leather or whatever. I don't know if there's examples out there of meat processors, but in other businesses, some examples of businesses coming together to form a cooperative.
Yeah, and I will add, even just last year in CoBank's Co-op Start award pool, I think there were 3 including Mark's co-op, but two other co-ops that received co-op start awards that were in meat processing industries. So even just in 1 year, there's a lot of growth happening here. I think I know for sure one was in response to a potential closure, and then the other was more not satisfied with what was available locally, and so uses the co-op model to create new options for the producers in their areas.
What about if there is let's just say there's a meat processor out there that is struggling and getting to be retirement age and doesn't want to go? I mean, can they put the rather than just saying I'm out of here and then the ranchers have to step up and take the process? What could an existing processor do to say to gauge the interest in their community? Of would ranchers be willing to organize to buy my business?
Mark, I think you should start.
So, I can say from our scenario, from Ron Vandervander's side of things, he was the sole owner, but half of our staff are still family, so we still, we're as near to a family business as we can be for them. I mean, up until February, his 90-year-old mother was still coming into work every day. But I think I'm gonna use his words, and his words were, once we got into this and once people started joining, we hadn't yet purchased it, but he came back and said, well, I wish we'd have started this 5 years ago. I could have, I could have, transitioned over and I could have done the parts of the job I wanted to do and not had this responsibility of the fiscal part of it. And I could have just done what I wanted to do. So in our case, I mean, I think, at that time, everything wouldn't have aligned. But right now, if you have models, co-op models that you can demonstrate to someone, whether you being a meat shop owner or whether you being rancher producers, I think you can mesh those together and potentially find a stepped retirement plan for that person, and that's my take. What he went from being, well, I'll give you some time to work on this out of, lifelong friendship, to he's probably one of the biggest co-op proponents I could ever find at this point in time, because he just feels really proud that his customers thought highly enough of him to let him retire, to buy him out to retire.
Good, good. So we got another question here about, and you answered a little bit of this with the $7,000 investment, but how much financing was needed to get off the ground, both equity investments from members and bank loans? And the other thing you mentioned, Mark, was you had preferred stock. And explain a little bit the difference between your common shareholders and preferred. Yeah.
So the preferred stock is just a direct investment, just a direct dividend paying investment in that. That gives you no voting privileges with the co-op. It's just I want to support local agriculture. I believe in this project. I want to invest some money here. The state of Montana caps what the dividend payout can be on that. So we do have some guidelines that we have to have. We have to have a declaration of what type of preferred stock we're selling. So there's also, geographic barriers depending on what the offering is. So, then a capital share is the one that gives you the ability to get on the schedule, that gives you a voting seat, and gives you rights in that co-op. Um, in our particular case, at our $7,000 investment, we've raised quite a bit of funding. Lending wise, we were able to find lending funds through the MPILP funding from USDA, that we were able to borrow 100% of the note price that we needed. Our lender here, Montana West Economic Development, we sat down, talked with them, and they said, you guys keep your money. Take our money, take this USDA funding and you hold on to your money and you see how this goes. We don't want you to come back saying, oh, we made too big of a down payment here. We don't have enough working capital. They said, run this and see what you can do. Run this and see what happens. So in our particular case, that's what we did. At the same time, we were approved for expansion funds as well. So we have lending funds available for that. We're working on getting tapped into those right now to begin an expansion and to start on that. So that's what we've done. And it was a good way to do it. It was a good opportunity because we were able to run this first year. And, you really need to have 12 months of cycle to see what your ups are, what your downs are. And we know after this that we have some months that we can buy some extra things, and we have other months that we need to tighten our belt and not make any additional acquisitions, I guess.
So you want to add anything there?
It's been great to watch up there, honestly. And from a capital standpoint, timing was everything, as Mark mentioned. The intermediary lending funds that became available through USDA really, and there's still some available, I might add. In different regions of the United States, there are still some intermediary lending funds available. Dave and I are still working on some projects, getting some of that funding now. So just know that and reach out if you all are looking for funding or looking for opportunities, and looking for that cooperative expertise. Mission West filled that need as Glacier was getting set up. Just a great partner for the project. And Dave and I have been able to work with them on other projects as well. So working with these cooperative development centers is so important, and having people on your team that know the processes, know the conversations that need to be had. And as Alex mentioned, let's talk through conflict resolution before the conflict happens and figure out how we're going to resolve it, knowing it's going to happen. So having all these tough conversations and figuring out how the board's set up, the voting and all these wonderful things that Mark and them got to do here, these are things that you need to be guided through. And seeing that happen, it was great, and seeing the cooperation was great. But have some team members on your side that have been through it, that know how to do it, and can help you be successful in setting it up. Don't just go about it yourself and hope it works. Pull in some team members and make sure that you're doing it the right way for long-term success. That's what I really wanted to add today.
Alex, this next one, Kim posted, is right up your alley. It's where might a small processor start if they were interested in working with livestock producers and developing a cooperative structure? Example, organizational costs, feasibility studies. How do they start the process?
Yeah, well, I would recommend that they go to the Cooperation Works website, go to our member map and find whatever co-op development center is nearest to them. And if they're not sure, they could send me an email. There's a contact form through our website. Definitely, if you are interested in starting a cooperative, having at least an intake call with a cooperative developer, with a cooperative development center, is a good place to start. They can help you clarify your vision. They can help figure out who might need to get involved in the next steps, and give you sort of a sense of what the overall journey will look like toward that cooperative, and if at different stages, if it makes sense to keep going or not. So that is certainly where I would encourage folks to start.
Great. And Nikki just put into the chat there the contact information for the website for Cooperation Works, so you can reach out to them. And just FYI, for those that are working with Flowery Hill, I was actually involved in a cooperative development center in a previous life. So yeah, can help connect you with a co-op development center as well. So let's just talk a little bit about some of the challenges in getting financing. We're seeing, Chris and I are beating our heads against the wall in financing with all of our clients, it seems like these days. But what are some of the challenges in financing a co-op, and what are some of the avenues that they might look at? And Kate, you're in the financing side, so I guess that one's for you. Yep.
Well, I will start by saying they don't let me near the money at CoBank. I'm not a lender. I stay far away from that. But from what I know about co-ops, it's two components. I think, there's the share loan that each individual member requires to purchase. In some instances, is required to purchase into the co-op, and then the underlying loan for the co-op itself. So CoBank, as I mentioned, is a lender to cooperatives in agribusiness. So certainly, I would be happy to put folks in touch with their local relationship manager who is allowed to touch the money and help with financing needs. But I think the other benefit of working with co-op developers I think Cooperation Works is just a great centralized place to find those organizations. But part of that network also includes lenders, and the technical assistance providers know which lenders are open to working and good working with cooperatives. I think, one of the challenges that cooperatives across sectors tend to face is that some lenders just simply don't know the cooperative structure and have no interest in learning the cooperative structure and how different financing needs to be structured. And so having folks who, again, have worked with cooperatives and can finance in a way that maintains the values of one member, one vote, and doesn't require any individual member owner, for example, putting up more equity or putting up personal collateral. And so having those trained and dedicated lenders is a real benefit.
Alex, anything you want to add on that?
Sure, yeah, I would first just second a lot of what Kate has put forward. There are definitely challenges for at least traditional lenders and really understanding the ownership model and how their lending would fit into that. But there are definitely co-op friendly lenders, including CoBank and some others that would be great places to start. And then I would just say that there traditionally has been some funding generally through the USDA that can go to supporting startup agriculture or growing rural and agricultural cooperatives. A lot of that funding right now is tenuous at best. So there's the Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program, the Socially Disadvantaged Groups Grant Program, and the Value Added Producer Grant Program. All of them are a little bit in limbo right now. If they manage to make it through cuts, they can continue to be a really amazing resource for this really important cooperative economic development work that does happen in rural communities across America. And if not, we're going to be doing some scrambling to try to figure out some other sources. But I know a little more than half the members of Cooperation Works are recipients of the Rural Cooperative Development Grant, and we poll them every few years to get a sense of their impact. And they, since I think 2008 up until about 2022, which was the last time we did the report, have used that grant funding to create or save, I think, over 25,000 jobs and to start over 2,000 or to help start over 2,000 businesses. And these, again, are the businesses that are rooted in community, that stay in community, that reinvest in the communities that they exist in. And they're so crucial, especially for, like places in rural America where maybe there's not as much, not as many like private market folks coming in and where the value really comes from the folks who are living there rather than the profit that can be extracted.
Right. Peter's got a really good question here. It says, could co-ops be a way to bring much needed resiliency to the U.S. processing industry? Let's talk about, the resiliency facet on it and what you see with co-ops as opposed to other businesses. And then I have a sort of a personal opinion that I'll throw out on that as well. So, yeah, but
Mark, kick it off.
So I would say absolutely, co-ops are a key to resiliency. I mean, nobody wants to be more independent than an American farmer. That's why the cooperation is sometimes hard to bring together. But once you do it, I mean, they want to market those animals where they want to market them, and they want to move them through the food chain as they want to. So it absolutely is a resiliency thing. Right at the moment is a little tougher time in record cattle prices right now. There's not a real compelling reason for people. I mean, a lot of them are taking a loss to direct market, but that's not going to be that way forever. I mean, that market swing is coming, probably not that far away, unfortunately. And so, the co-ops are absolutely, you look at that. I mean, the 1,500 head that we process a year, and once we expand, well, that makes a huge difference in our community. That makes a huge difference in Northwest Montana as far as supply goes, versus nationally, or being dependent on, a processor that on a large scale processor that's 400 miles away. So yeah, that it's the key to it, if you ask me.
Just add to that to say, co-ops are really designed in service of their member owners. And so that service is to help those businesses that are members of the co-op succeed in the long term, right? Whereas in some investor-owned businesses, the primary goal, their fiduciary responsibility is to return dollars to shareholders. Well, in the case of the co-op, the shareholders are the processors in this case. And so I think it just flips that mindset on its head a little bit in terms of who the benefit is for and what the end goal is, particularly going through hard times. So I think, where other parts of the economy might see ups and downs, the goal of a co-op is to see more of a steady through line.
I'll just interject my personal bias on this, because through the years I've worked with a number of food business startups, being around the Boulder, Colorado area, heavily involved in a lot of the natural and organic, and these companies that rely on outside investors to come into their business. Those investors are looking for you to build your business in 3 years to X amount, and then be able to sell it for 3X to a large company. And they're just not as grounded in the rural community. And Kate, you hit it on the head, is that the foundation of a co-op is the community members that are there. And particularly if it's farmers and ranchers, they're used to building a business to pass on to the kids rather than to sell out to that. And so that's again, a personal bias on that. This is an interesting one from Anna, is that, have you seen or worked with custom exempt co-ops? Not just, USDA inspected. Is there an opportunity to do a cooperative butcher shop for a local community that might not be inspected? Chris, I'll let you take that on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a Chris question.
I was going to throw it at Mark, but I think Mark and them have a good opportunity. They've been able to do custom exempt work. They can do inspected work. I think it's the co-op's decision to make, Anna, on what the need is, what the demand is, and what the desire is for the product that's coming out of the plant. I think I would say the majority, if not all, the cooperative meat processors that Dave and I work with are inspected, but that is because they want to sell their products in retail. They want to self-distribute. They want to use that product in restaurants. But that's the driver is the demand for the product and where it's going to be sold at. So I think as you look at your community, you're going to want to figure out, where's the product going to go? Is it just for the individual use, not for resale? Does that fit the need? Or are your members wanting to sell that product retail, self-distribute, put it in restaurants, etc.?
And I think that's key, is, again, it gets back to that figuring out at the beginning, what's your vision? What are you trying to do? And if there is a community where people are just processing for themselves, but they don't have that kind of access, yeah, some type of a cooperative. It doesn't have to be a complex cooperative. There are umpteen different types of cooperative structure. And again, that's where I think working with a cooperative development specialist, the big difference between open co-ops and what we call new generation co-ops and those type of things can be helpful. So we've kind of cleared out all the questions out of the inbound. And here comes one. Yeah, Rebecca said, have you heard of a meat co-op that didn't use any debt financing but rather sold enough shares to voting and non-voting members in their community to raise all of the funds, and then maybe use debt financing for just an operating loan to get started? Any examples, Kate?
I was going to say, I don't have examples, but it does lend itself to kind of the evolving model of co-ops around multi-stakeholder cooperatives, right? I think the situation Rebecca is describing might be a little challenging if the membership block is only producers. But if they include a membership tier for the community members or folks who just want to support this initiative, that would be one way to raise funds from co-op members without without taking on debt. But I unfortunately don't have an exact example.
And I would just say that, yeah, 30 years ago, I was involved in a bakery co-op where the wheat farmers came together and raised the money through their equity investment that they needed to buy the business to do that. So it can be done, but it's, when you're dealing with as Rebecca knows well, MPAN is up to their eyebrows and working with meat processors, trying to do financing. Yeah, this is a costly, low margin business. So, but I think the more you can include the producers and broaden it and show the benefit, it helps raise that equity that's needed. So, any other questions that anybody wants to type in the chat here? If not, we'll go ahead. Just some closing thoughts. So, Kate, yep, you're on camera, so kick it off.
Oh
Yep.
gosh. No, I would just say thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you all today. And wanted to encourage those who, think there might be a pipeline here to consider working with Flower Hill Institute or your local co-op development center to apply for a co-op start grant. I will say, that is really intended for co-ops that are from the beginning formation stages and still in need of grant funding for feasibility studies, all the way to co-ops that are in formation for about 3 or 5 years. I can't remember, the numbers really are not my thing, folks. But really looking at that launching off the ground for organizing here. So just wanted to give a plug for Co-op Start.
And let me, before Alex and Mark, you finish up, Rebecca had a follow-up that I think is really important. Can you structure the non-voting shares or the preferred shares to convert to debt later, kind of like a convertible equity investment? You're arching your eyebrows there, Kate, so you're pondering that. Yeah.
That's a good question. And this is where, I will say I'm not a co-op developer. I'm just someone who is deeply enthusiastic about co-ops. So I think it would be a great question. Chris might have the answer here, but I would say for the most part, it tends to be member owners can design things how they see fit.
And that's why I was
Alex?
gonna volley it to Mark a little bit, but I was a part of a lot of Mark and Glacier Co-op's meetings, and these topics were brought up about voting members and non-voting members, and in Glacier Co-op's region, they did have a lot of interest of non-producer investors that wanted to see the project move forward and did want to put funding into the project. And I think that can be structured in a lot of different ways. And Rebecca, that is a very, very good question. Mark, do you have any thoughts on that, or maybe some of the conversations you all had when you were looking at that versus how much money you raise from voting members and non-voting members?
So we had a lot of discussion about that, and there wasn't a clear path for a recapture there on that. It kind of came down to, if we the simplest thing we could figure out is if we got to a point where that's what we were trying to do was recapture those lost shares, we would have to simply advertise out for those and try to pull those back in the same way they were offered, by good faith and wanting to see what was best for the community, I guess, and the support for community agriculture. So, for our side of it, we've raised about 25% of our funds have been preferred stock investments versus 75% in capital shares. We haven't pursued a lot of preferred stock investment just because of the fact we haven't needed it. So it's a tool we've kept in reserve, I guess. It's so many moving parts as you're trying to do that, you know, to try to juggle all those balls. You have to kind of set some on the back burner and focus on running that business and serving producers and building that producer network, because that's the first priority.
Great. And Mark, why don't you go ahead with your closing comments? And Nikki, if you'll put the slide up there so people know how to get a hold of folks. So you can talk over the credits there, Mark. Yeah.
So I would say that resources would be the thing that I would say from the co-op, from building a co-op, from doing anything to do with co-ops, meat processing, resources. Until you explore it, you'll never realize what's out there. I mean, it was absolutely amazing because I thought we were going to be basically going on our own with this. And I mean, opportunities came out of the woodwork of people saying, you know, when you get to this, we're here for you. We're here to help you. And it's been absolutely amazing. So if it's something that you have an interest in, want to pitch to somebody, you know, start off with that slide, start off with Dave or Chris. There's resources available, and it's pretty amazing.
Great. And Alex?
First, it's just been really great to have this conversation with all of you and get some of these questions from folks on the ground. And I would really just encourage people to go check out the Cooperation Works website, really explore the websites of our members. If you are looking to start a cooperative, they are absolutely invaluable resources. And even if you're not quite ready to take the first step, or of actually contacting them, there's plenty of resources on both our website and our members' websites that can tell you about the cooperative development practice, offer information on the different types of cooperatives. So yeah, we're here as a resource, and I really hope that you utilize this network in wherever your cooperative journey takes you.
Great. Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, final comments.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us today. And you know, this is a great topic to cover. We have a lot of great resources. I know that Mark and Kate and Alex would all be willing to help, and Dave and I are definitely here to help. So if we can help you in any way, please reach out.
And remember, you'll be getting a 2-question survey. Fill that out. Let us know what you thought about today, but also let us know what you want us to cover down the road. So appreciate everybody being here, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.